Middlesbrough Football Club, also known as Boro, are an English football club based in Middlesbrough, who play in the Football League Championship. Formed in 1876, they have played at the Riverside Stadium since August 1995, their third ground since turning professional in 1889. Their longest-serving home was Ayresome Park, where they played for 92 years, from 1903 to 1995. They were one of the founding members of the Premier League in 1992. The club's main rivals are Sunderland and Newcastle United, however the club also takes part in Yorkshire derbies with several other Yorkshire clubs. Most notably Leeds United. The club's highest league finish to date was third in the 1913-14 season, and they have only spent 2 seasons outside of the Football League's top 2 divisions. The club came close to folding in 1986 after experiencing severe financial difficulties before the club was saved by a consortium led by then board member and later chairman Steve Gibson. Middlesbrough were controversially deducted 3 points for failing to fulfill a fixture against Blackburn Rovers during the 1996-97 Premier League season and were subsequently relegated. They were promoted the following season and spent 11 consecutive seasons in the top division before relegation. Middlesbrough won the League Cup in 2004, the club's first and only major trophy. They reached the 2006 UEFA Cup final in May 2006 but were beaten by Spanish side Sevilla. On May 24, 2009, Middlesbrough were relegated to the Championship, failing to extend their 11-year stay in the Premier League. The club's traditional kit is red with white detailing. The various crests throughout the club's history, the most recent of which was adopted in May 2007, incorporate a lion rampant. History. They won the FA Amateur Cup in 1895 and again in 1898. The club turned professional in 1889, but reverted to amateur status in 1892. They turned professional permanently in 1899. After 3 seasons, they won promotion to the First Division, where they would remain for the next 22 years. In 1903, the club moved to Ayresome Park, their home for the next 92 years. In 1905, the club sanctioned the transfer of Alf Common for £1,000, a record fee. Over the next few years, their form fluctuated greatly, rising to 6th in 1907 and €08 before dropping to 17th 2 seasons later. The club rose to their highest league finish to date, 3rd, in 1913 and €14. The First World War soon intervened and football was suspended. In 2012 Boro went on to win the league before league football resumed. Middlesbrough won the Northern Victory League, but the team were unable to maintain their previous form and finished the 1919 Euro-20 season in mid-table. They remained in the First Division for the next few seasons, but were relegated in 1923 Euro-24 after finishing bottom, 10 points adrift of their nearest rivals. 3 seasons later, they won the Division 2 title. During that season, debutant George Camsell, who had signed from 3rd Division Northside Durham City the previous season, finished with a record 59 league goals, which included 9 hat-tricks. He would continue as top scorer for each of the next 10 seasons. Their tenure back in the top flight lasted only 1 season, and the club were relegated. They were promoted at the first attempt in 1928 to Euro-29, winning another 2nd Division title. The club remained in the First Division until 1954. The decade before the war saw the emergence of Wilf Mannion and George Hardwick, both of whom would go on to become England internationals in the years ahead. Middlesbrough climbed to 4th in the last full season before the Second World War and were expected to challenge for the title next season, but the war intervened. After the war, the club was unable to recover the form of the previous seasons and hovered around mid-table and exited in the early rounds of the FA Cup. Soon afterwards the team began to falter, eventually suffering relegation in 1953 Euro-54. This was the start of a 20-year spell outside the top division, but saw the emergence of one of the club's top goal scorers, Brian Clough, who scored 204 goals in 222 games, before he left for Sunderland. Over that period, Middlesbrough maintained reasonable progress in the Second Division but were never serious contenders for promotion. After a fourth-place finish in 1962 Euro 63, the club endured a steady decline and were relegated to the third division for the first time in their history in 1966. New manager Stan Anderson returned the club to the second flight at the first attempt. Middlesbrough would not finish below ninth during the next 8 seasons. By 1974, Jack Charlton had taken over as manager and guided the team back to the top flight. They ensured promotion as early as March 23, and with 8 games of the season left, they became runaway champions, finishing with a record 65 points. Middlesbrough won their first silverware as a professional side in the 1975 Euro 76 season, lifting the Anglo-Scottish Cup in its inaugural season after a 2-legged final win over Fulham. The club experienced severe financial difficulties during the mid-1980s. Middlesbrough were dropping down the table, and finished 19th in the 1984 Euro 85 season. In April 1986 the club had to borrow £30,000 from the PFA to pay wages. The final game of the season saw Middlesbrough relegated to the third division once more. That summer, the club called in the provisional liquidator and shortly afterwards, the club was wound up and the gates to Ayresome Park were padlocked. Without the £350,000 capital required for Football League registration, a new rule, it seemed inevitable that the club would fold permanently. However, Steve Gibson, a member of the board at the time, brought together a consortium and with 10 minutes to spare before the deadline, they completed their registration with the Football League for the 1986 Euro 87 season. Following the registration came both a change of club crest and a change of the official company name to Middlesbrough Football and Athletic Club Limited. Over the next 2 seasons, Middlesbrough gained successive promotions into Division 2 and then into Division 1. The next season though, they came straight back down to Division 2, and with it came the then British transfer record move of Gary Pallister to Manchester United for £2.3 a million. Despite constant promotion and relegation, Middlesbrough were founding members of the FA Premier League for the 1992 Euro 93 season. Player-manager Brian Robson, from Manchester United, took charge in 1994 and Middlesbrough were brought back into national attention. Following promotion to the Premier League and high-profile purchases like diminutive Brazilian Juninho, many considered Middlesbrough were on the way up. However, a difficult 1996 Euro 97 season was compounded by a deduction of 3 points imposed just after Christmas, as punishment for the club's failure to fulfill a fixture against Blackburn, which ultimately resulted in relegation. Without the points deduction, the club would have had enough points to avoid relegation. At the same time, the club managed to reach both the League and FA Cup finals for the first time, but lost out in both. Despite being in the second tier, they were again runners-up in the League Cup final the next year. Despite losing high-profile players Fabrizio Ravanelli and Juninho due to relegation, Middlesbrough were promoted back to the Premiership at the first attempt in 1998. The following season saw them settle well and they enjoyed a 12-game unbeaten run midway through 1998 Euro 99, including a 3 Euro 2 win at Old Trafford in January during which they took a 3 Euro 0 lead. It was United's only home defeat during their treble-winning season. They continued to stay secure in mid-table the following season, thanks mainly to the goals of Hamilton Ricard and the signings of big-name players such as Paulink and Christian Ziege. In 2000 Euro 01 they had a brief relegation scare that was solved with the arrival of Terry Venables as co-manager, and a 3 Euro 0 win away at Arsenal in March was the team's best result. The trend of buying European stars continued with the acquisitions of Christian Karembeu and Alan Boukouya. Brian Robson left the club before the start of 2001 Euro 02 season, having served as manager for 7 years, and was replaced by Manchester United assistant coach Steve McClaren. The following season saw Premiership security maintained as Middlesbrough slowly improved and were seen as a tough side to beat when playing at the Riverside Stadium. During McClaren's reign, Middlesbrough achieved their highest Premier League placing of 7th in the 2004 Euro 05 season. The 2003 Euro 04 season was the most successful in the club's history as they finally won a major trophy after beating Bolton to a Euro 1 in the League Cup final under manager Steve McClaren. This success also ensured that Middlesbrough would qualify for Europe a Euro, the UEFA Cup a Euro for the first time, in which they reached the last 16. UEFA Cup qualification was achieved for the second consecutive year after a dramatic 1-1 away draw with Manchester City thanks to a late penalty save from Mark Schwarzer in the last game of the season. Middlesbrough reached the 2006 UEFA Cup final in Eindhoven, following two comebacks from 3-0 down in the rounds preceding it, but lost 4-0 to Sevilla. Following the cup final, McLaren left to head up the England team, and captain Gareth Southgate took over, despite not having the coaching qualifications, but he was allowed to continue after receiving special dispensation. During the 2007 Euro 08 season, Southgate broke Middlesbrough's record transfer fee, paying £13.6 million for Brazilian striker Afonso Alves. Southgate's first two seasons saw the club finish in 12th and 13th places. He oversaw the club reaching the quarter-finals of the FA Cup for 3 seasons, but the club was relegated to the Football League Championship on the last day of the 2008 Euro 09 season. Southgate was sacked in October 2009, and replaced by Gordon Strachan. At the time of Southgate's dismissal, Boro were 4th in the Championship and only 1 point away from the automatic promotion spot, but their form under Strachan was significantly worse and they finished mid-table. Despite starting the 2010 Euro 11 campaign as promotion favourites, the club endured a disappointing start to the season, securing only 1 point in 5 away games. Having slipped to 20th in the Championship following a home defeat to rivals Leeds, Strachan resigned on October 18. A week later, Tony Mowbray was confirmed as the new manager. Having staved off the threat of relegation, Mowbray successfully transformed Boro's fortunes, eventually guiding them to a top-half finish. Boro ended the season top of the form table after 4 consecutive league wins, the first such run since 1998. However, despite a magnificent first half of the season, Boro failed to capitalise, and finished 7th in the league, missing out on the playoffs by 5 points and 1 position. Following a poor run of form of 2 wins in 12 games in the 2013 Euro 14 campaign, on October 21, 2013, nearly 3 years after his arrival, Tony Mowbray left the club with immediate effect. Aitor Karanka, a former Spanish defender and assistant coach at Real Madrid, became the new Middlesbrough manager on November 13, 2013, signing a 2-year contract. He became the first non-British manager at the club. Overall, seasons spent at Level 1 of the Football League system, 60. Seasons spent at Level 2 of the Football League system, 43, seasons spent at Level 3 of the Football League system, 2, seasons spent at Level 4 of the Football League system, 0, as of season 2014/15. Colours and crest. Middlesbrough's original home kit upon election to the Football League in 1899 was a white home shirt with blue shorts, and they did not adopt their colours of red and white until later that season. Previous kits included a white shirt with a blue and white polka-dotted collar from around 1889. The Middlesbrough kit has remained broadly the same over the years, with a red shirt and socks in either red or white shorts. The distinctive broad white stripe across the chest was introduced by Jack Charlton in 1973 and brought back for a one-off in 1997 Euro 98, and then again for the 2000 Euro 01 and 2004 Euro 05 seasons due to popular demand. The club subsequently announced in December 2007 that the club would allow the fans to decide via an online and text vote whether the white band should return for the following season. On January 8, 2008, the club announced that the white band was to return, with 77.4% of voters voting in its favour, with the fans to choose the final shirt designed from a selection of 3 designs, of which the winner was announced on May 7, 2008. The Middlesbrough crest has gone through 4 changes since the formation of the club. Initially, the badge was simply the town of Middlesbrough's crest with a red lion instead of a blue lion in order to fit in with the club's colours. Following the adoption of the white band on the shirts in 1973, only the red lion remained with the letters MFC underneath in red. This was further adapted following the reformation of the club in 1986 to a circular crest with the lion in the middle and the words Middlesbrough Football Club 1986 around the circle in order to reflect this new era. In 2007, Middlesbrough changed their crest once again, this time with the lion inside a shield and the words Middlesbrough Football Club 1876 underneath. The club stated that this was to reflect the club's long history and not just their post-liquidation status. Since the 2009 Euro 10 season, Middlesbrough's kit has been produced by Adidas, replacing the previous deal with Ayresome which had lasted for 15 years. The kit is only available in the UK from the official club shops and Middlesbrough's online store. The club's shirt sponsor was announced on July 20, 2007 as satellite navigation device manufacturers Garmin. This contract was extended until the end of the 2008 Euro 09 season in a deal described as the biggest in the club's history. As of the start of the 2011-2012 season, Middlesbrough will be sponsored by Ramsden's Pawnbrokers. The new kit for 2013-14 sticks with the red and white colours and also pays homage to the club's Ironopolis roots. Kit manufacturers: 1976 Euro, 1977 Euro Bukta, 1977 Euro, 1983 Euro Adidas, 1984 Euro, 1987 Euro Hummel, 1987 Euro, 1992 Euro Skill, 1992 Euro, 1994 Euro Admiral, 1994 Euro, 2009 Euro Ayresome, 2009 Euro Presenter Euro Adidas. Kit sponsors: 1980 Euro, 1982 Euro Datsun Cleveland, 1982 Euro, 1984 Euro McLean Holmes, 1984 Euro, 1986 Euro Camerons, 1986 Euro, 1988 Euro Dickens, 1988 Euro, 1990 Euro Heritage Hampers, 1990 Euro, 1992 Euro Evening Gazette, 1992 Euro, 1994 Euro ICI, 1994 Euro, 1995 Euro Dickens, 1995 Euro, 2002 Euro Selnet BT Selnet, 2002 Euro, 2004 Euro Dial-a-Phone, 2004 Euro, 2007 Euro 888com, 2007 Euro, 2010 Euro Garmin, 2011 Euro Presenter Euro Ramsden's. Sponsorship: Ramsden's a Euro official sponsor, Adidas a Euro official partner, Jaguar a Euro official partner, Teesside University a Euro official partner, FCBETZ.com a Euro official partner, Heineken a Euro official partner, BBC Tees a Euro official partner, SG Petch a Euro official partner, Dickinson Dees a Euro official partner, Rockcliffe Hall a Euro official partner, Tees Valley Coach Travel a Euro official travel provider, Stadium. After formation in 1876, and with the club still amateurs, Middlesbrough's first 2 years of football were played at Albert Park in Middlesbrough. After seeing the damage being caused by players and supporters, the Park Committee ordered the club to find an alternate venue. The club moved to Brecon Hill, behind the present-day Middlesbrough College, after agreeing to rent the land from its owner. However, 2 years later in 1880, the owner increased the rent and the club decided to move. They moved into the Linthorpe Road ground in 1882, home at the time of Middlesbrough Cricket Club. The cricket club departed in 1893 Euro 94 to move to the Brecon Hill field, and Middlesbrough Football Club became sole users of the ground. With the club's growing size, and entry to the Football League, they had to move to a new ground in 1903, Ayresome Park. It was designed by Archibald Leitch and would be the club's home for the next 92 years. Following the Taylor Report in 1990, the ground either needed modernising or the club needed a new stadium. The club decided on the latter, and moved out at the end of the 1994 Euro 95 season. It was used as a training ground during 1995 Euro 96, before it was demolished in 1997 and a housing estate built in its place. The club now trains at £7 a million complex at Rockcliffe Park, in Haworth, on the outskirts of Darlington. The Riverside Stadium, named by the supporters of the club after a vote, became the club's home in 1995. It was the first stadium to be built in line with the Taylor Report's recommendations on all-seater stadia for clubs in the top 2 divisions of the English Football League system. It was originally a 30,000-seater stadium, constructed at a cost of £16 a million, before it was expanded in 1998 to a capacity of 35,100 for an extra £5 a million. The capacity of the stadium has since been reduced slightly to its current level of 34,988. Average attendances at Middlesbrough matches have fluctuated over the past several years, moving from a 2004 €05 high average of 32,012 to a low of 26,092 in 2006 a €07, then up again to 28,428 in 2008 a €09. Following relegation to the Championship, attendances have dipped, although the crowd of 23,451 which saw Middlesbrough's first Championship game against Sheffield United represents far higher gates than is usual for the division, and indeed larger than those of some Premier League clubs, for example Queen's Park Rangers or Wigan Athletic. A reorganisation of the Riverside Stadium occurred at the start of the 2013 Euro-14 season. Away fans were moved from behind the goal at the south stand to the east stand, whilst home fans can now sit behind the goal in an attempt to create a bigger atmosphere at the stadium. Also, a giant TV screen was placed in the southeast corner. Supporters. Traditionally, supporters come from Middlesbrough itself and towns in the immediate area. Middlesbrough have one of the highest proportions in Britain of locally born season ticket holders at 80%, and one of the highest proportions of female fans at 20%. A survey at the start of the 2007 Euro-08 season found Middlesbrough supporters were the seventh loudest set of fans in the Premier League. Middlesbrough Official Supporters Club, which features their own team in the local football league, has links with supporters clubs across the globe. The largest supporters clubs include the Official Supporters Club, the Middlesbrough Disabled Supporters Association, Yarm Reds, Red Faction and Middlesbrough Supporters South. Middlesbrough supporters' main rivals are Sunderland, Newcastle United, and Leeds United, a fact confirmed by PlanetFootball.com's 2004 survey, where Sunderland and Newcastle fans also considered Middlesbrough to be amongst their top three rivalries. Carlisle United see Middlesbrough as their biggest rivals, but Middlesbrough supporters have not reciprocated, as they do not see Carlisle as a top three rival. The nickname Smoggies was first used as a derogatory term by opposing supporters. It relates to the industrial air pollution that used to hang over the town, but it was later used by Middlesbrough fans in a somewhat self-deprecating manner before finally being adopted as a badge of pride by supporters of the club. An example of this can be seen on the banners carried to away games stating Smoggies on tour. Middlesbrough fans were notably praised by UEFA chief executive Lars Christer Olsen after their behaviour during the 2005 Euro-06 UEFA Cup campaign. He commended that, "You have the satisfaction of knowing that, although your team did not win the game, your supporters present in Eindhoven proved to the world that football fans can turn a match into a friendly, violence-free celebration." Middlesbrough fans had also been praised by Cleveland police for their behaviour in previous rounds, particularly in the light of aggravation prior to and during the match at Roma. Media relations. Middlesbrough were the first football club in the world to launch its own TV channel, Boro TV. The first broadcasts were tied to the club's first ever major cup final appearance in 1997, a full year ahead of Manchester United's MUTV, which still claims to be the first in the world. The channel was the brainchild of then NTL marketing director, Peter Wilcock. Its programs were not live initially but were pre-recorded and hosted by local radio TV broadcaster and Boro fan, Dave Roberts. Boro TV went on to claim another first when in August 2001 it became the first English football club to broadcast time-delayed full match footage of their league games on their own channel. Boro TV ran through NTL cable television until July 2005. The club now show match highlights through a subscription-based scheme on their official website. Middlesbrough's official matchday programme, Red Square, was programmed monthly as 2006 Euro-07 Programme of the Year. There are numerous other fanzines available, most notably Fly Me to the Moon, formed in September 1988 following Bruce Rioch's quote to Tony Mowbray, stating "If I had to go to the moon I'd want him by my side." Community. Middlesbrough Football Club in the community was founded in 1995 by club chairman Steve Gibson and is the largest community-based football scheme in the United Kingdom. It is run separately from the football club but receives support from both the club in terms of providing players, staff, stadium facilities and PR in the matchday programme and other publications, as well as support from other local organisations. Since 2002, the club and MFCIC have also run the Middlesbrough Enterprise Academy, a scheme which helps local children improve their entrepreneurial skills and increase their awareness of business planning and finance. In March 2008, plans were announced by the Premier League to roll out the scheme nationally amongst all Premier League clubs. It was announced in December 2007 that Middlesbrough Football Club had carried out more community work during 2006-07 than any other Premier League club, rising from second place the previous year, with the club making 318 appearances a year, almost twice the Premier League average of 162. They were in the top two for community appearances again in 2007-08, with 374 a 17% increase on the previous season. Middlesbrough's mascot is Rory the Lion. The club runs Rory's Children's Charity Fund, which purchases items for local children's charities. In 2009, steel producer Corus Group announced the possibility that it would mothball its Teesside plant, with up to 4,000 employees and contractors facing redundancy, after a consortium of steel magnates walked away from a 10-year deal. Middlesbrough Football Club helped with the Save Our Steel campaign by hosting dozens of steel workers and their families as they marched around the ground, promoted the campaign via the stadium's PA system, scoreboards and in match-day programs, while players wore T-shirts during warm-ups promoting the campaign. Chairman Steve Gibson said, "Middlesbrough Football Club exists for the community, for the people of Teesside, and the closure of the steel plants threatens to rip the heart out of our community. We cannot stand by and allow that to happen. We want the steel workers and their families to know that we are behind them and will help their campaign in any way we can. We like to think that the football club is the flagship of Teesside. Well, this is our town and these are our people and we have to do what we can to help them." Honours: Domestic League, Football League 2nd Division / Football League Division 1, winners 1926 a €27, 1928 a €29, 1973 a €74, 1994 a €95, runners-up, 1901 a €02, 1991 a €92, 1997 a €98, Football League 3rd Division, runners-up, 1966 a €67, 1986 a €87, Northern League, winners 1893 a €94, 1894 a €95. 1896 a €97, runners-up, 1890 a €91, 1891 a €92, 1897 a €98, Cup, League Cup, winners, 2004, runners-up, 1997, 1998, FA Cup, runners-up, 1997, FA Amateur Cup, winners, 1895, 1898, Full Members Cup, runners-up, 1990, FA Youth Cup, winners, 2004, runners-up, 1990, 2003, International, UEFA Cup, runners-up, 2006, Anglo-Scottish Cup, winners, 1976, Kirin Cup, winners, 1980. Club staff, as of December 26, 2013, players, current squad, as of August 16, 2014. Note: flags indicate national team as defined under FIFA eligibility rules. Players may hold more than one non-FIFA nationality. Reserves and Academy. Out on loan. Note: flags indicate national team as defined under FIFA eligibility rules. Players may hold more than one non-FIFA nationality. Notable players, Middlesbrough legends. These 10 players were voted for by fans as part of a campaign with the Evening Gazette. Top appearances. These players made more than 430 appearances during their time at the club. The number in brackets indicates the number of appearances in all competitions. Top goal scorers. These players scored more than 140 goals during their time with the club. The number in brackets indicates the number of goals scored in all competitions. Player of the Year award winners. Football League 100 Legends. The Football League 100 Legends is a list of 100 legendary football players produced by the Football League in 1998, to celebrate the 100th season of league football. English Football Hall of Fame. The English Football Hall of Fame is housed at the National Football Museum in Preston, England. The hall aims to celebrate and highlight the achievements of top English footballers and footballers who have played in England. These players appeared for or managed Middlesbrough at some point in their careers. Scottish Football Hall of Fame. The following former Middlesbrough players and managers have been inducted into the Scottish Football Hall of Fame. Middlesbrough players at World Cups. The following players were chosen to represent their country at the World Cup while contracted to Middlesbrough. Managers. The following are all the full-time Middlesbrough managers since the club turned professional in 1899. References and notes. External links, official websites, mfc.co.uk official club website, Middlesbrough at the Football League's official website, news sites, Middlesbrough FC. On BBC Sport, club news Euro recent results Euro upcoming fixtures Euro club statistics, Middlesbrough news from Sky Sports, fan other websites, Boro stat on official stats and graphs website, Middlesbrough at Sport Epoch.